Hello and welcome to Qtr Time podcast. I'm Lucy G.
And I'm Lucy P. And we're here to bring you all the netball goodness you never knew you needed. Hello everyone, and a massive, massive welcome to episode 1 of our Commonwealth Games coverage.
Luce is here. Where has the time gone?
I know. It's so exciting. We literally cannot wait. We're so excited to be bringing you all the action from Birmingham over the next 10 days. If you missed our content schedule for the games, it is pinned to our social media pages, so please do check it out. We've got recorded podcasts being released. We've got live podcasts on Twitter. We've got exclusive behind-the-scenes social media content. All of it is coming your way throughout the games. We are too excited. I'm an excitable person anyway, Luce, you know that about me. But this is like another level of excitement. And we'll be up in Birmingham throughout. So please do let us know if you're around. It'd be great to catch you. So back to today's show. What have we got coming up, Luce?
To kick us off, we'll be given a little preview into each of the 12 Commonwealth Games teams with a particular focus on the top 5 nations. To help us with this massive endeavour, we have enlisted the help of the incredible Michael Hutchinson and Jenny Sinclair from Netball Scoop. We'll be highlighting key talking points, players to watch, and of course, our predictions for the final placings. We cover literally everything that you need to know, and we bring you up to date before all the action kicks off on Friday.
Amazing. Let's dive straight in. It is such an honour and super, super exciting to welcome Michael Hutchinson and Jenny Sinclair from Netball Scoop. Welcome, guys.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Lucy.
So firstly, before we get started, how are you guys feeling ahead of the games? There must be a lot of preparation going on behind the scenes from your side.
I can't talk for Michael, but from my side, the preparation got done a little bit earlier and I've had a break for a couple of weeks, which has been lovely. So I know there's been a lot of hard work done in the background sort of while I've been away though.
Brilliant. And Michael, how are you feeling? Yeah,
fine. I think the only thing I'm more concerned about is the late nights and the very early mornings that's coming our way over the next 10 days or so. But lots of meetings and lots of discussion and lots of graphics planning and all that sort of stuff, which means we're really close to the start of the event, which is obviously very exciting.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things, isn't it? It's like we've had 4 years building up to this, but it still feels kind of like, oh my God, it's all happening so suddenly. But yeah, it's amazing to have you guys, and thanks so much for sparing the time. So as you know, today we're previewing all the teams that will be competing in the upcoming Commonwealth Games. And we're going to do this in world ranking order. So we're starting with Barbados. So Barbados will have their work cut out in a pool that contains Jamaica, Australia, South Africa, Scotland, and Wales, but they do have a number of seasoned campaigners in the side. So, Michael, I'll come to you first. What can we expect to see from Barbados?
Well, they have a lot of experience with their athletes, and obviously their co-captain, Latonia Blackman, will join Jiva Mentor in attending her 6th Commonwealth Games, which is an incredible feat. They've appeared at every Commonwealth Games so far, but I don't feel that we're going to get a great Barbados outfit at this tournament. I think their glory days and their challenge days across that middle sort of section of the competition are probably gone for now. They played a 3-test series against St. Vincent, who are ranked 8 places below them earlier this year, and only won by margins of between 9 and 17 goals, and then got thrashed by Scotland in December by margins of 37 and 42, who are only ranked 3 places higher. So they'll be there to compete, obviously, and be wanting to put their best foot forward, but I'm not expecting great things from Barbados at this Games.
And so for a finishing position, do you think they'll be the wooden spoon?
I have put them in 12th place, yeah.
Yeah. That would make sense on world ranking as well. And then any particular names that you're looking out to seeing from the Barbados side?
Well, Shanika Wharton, their goal shooter, is someone I enjoy watching purely and simply because she has no fear when it comes to shooting from anywhere in that goal circle and shoots at relatively high accuracy. At the 2019 World Cup. She shot at 88% and shoots around 50% of Barbados's goals. So when they're able to find her, she can be very lethal for them. So it would be a matter of being able to find her as consistently as possible if they're going to challenge for at least a win in Pool A.
Yeah. Fantastic. I do think they're in the pool of death, to be honest with you. It's neither pool is great, but I think, you would want to be avoiding that one. Fantastic stuff. So moving on to Northern Ireland then. Jenny, I'm going to come to you for this one. So Northern Ireland have a few standout players in the squad, but of the 3 home nations, they actually have the fewest number of players with VNSL experience, and they have just 5 who are currently playing in the Super League. So which area of the court do you think is the greatest concern for Northern Ireland?
I really couldn't single out a specific area of the court, and I think part of the problem for me is that, by the time the Commonwealth Games usually come around, we've had 3 years to really watch the teams and see, how they're forming and the combinations going. And with COVID, we just have seen very little test matches or heard very little that's come out. So you can take my predictions and basically throw them out the window, I think. For me, Northern Ireland's greatest strength is that many of them are also Gaelic footballers, and they're just gritty. They're a team that never gives up despite what's going on in the background. So I don't think that they'll particularly star at this Games, but I really couldn't pick a specific area of weakness for them. But I think they'll never give up. They'll just keep trying.
Yeah, absolutely. We love seeing that grit out on court as well. And we know they're ranked 11th in the world, but they did actually manage to finish 8th in the Commonwealth Games last time around. So where do you think we'll see them, Jenny, at the end of this competition?
I think we will see them finish sort of around 8th or 9th. They've had a reasonable amount of international match practice just in the last year, and then they had those games earlier on against lower ranked teams that, to get their way into the Commonwealth Games. And so they've had a little bit more competition than probably some of their competition has. I think the return of Elaine Rice as their coach, is a particular strength also. She knows the team really well. She knows how to get them moving. So, I think around 8th or 9th is probably where we'll see them finish.
Fantastic. And which warrior would be worrying you if you were the opposition?
Look, I'm an original member of the Caroline O'Hanlon fan club. I just think she's beautiful. Love Caroline. And, we've recently seen that she hasn't re-signed with Manchester Thunder for next year. She's 38. She's got an alternative career as a doctor. So I do think that she's perhaps thinking about retirement either this year or next year after the Worlds. And so I think we just all sit back and marvel at Queen Caroline and just watch her do her thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could not agree with that anymore if I wanted to. I think you're absolutely spot on there. She is just a sensation. And I think when you think of, football, the netball and doctor as well, I honestly don't know how she does it. She's clearly superhuman.
A little tiny bit of interest. So the Netball Scoop logo, the figure in the middle, is actually Caroline.
Stop it. Is it really?
It is, yeah. From a photo that one of our photographers took back, Michael, I think at the last Commonwealth Games, I think, from memory. So, yep, that's her.
Oh, I had absolutely no idea. That is a lovely little nugget there. That's awesome. So moving on to Trinidad and Tobago, who are in Group B. The massive news for them, obviously, is the injury to Sammy Wallace, absolutely devastating in the opening round, I think it was, of SSN. And of course, there's also the non-selection of the experienced goal attack, Khalifa McCollin. So, Michael, where do you think Trinidad and Tobago will be looking to fill this gap in terms of their experience in the shooting end?
Yeah, as a massive loss to not have either Sam Wallace or Khalifa McCollin for the first time since the 2015 World Cup in Sydney. So that's a long time that both of those athletes have been in the national side. Jolisa Cooper, though, who plays goal attack and wing attack, she's been in the last 15 years. She played at the 2007 World Cup in New Zealand, made her Com Games debut 3 years later. So she is also the vice captain and certainly has a lot of leadership experience. And then Afisha Knoll, who played at Seven Stars as well a couple of years ago, I think 2016. She is a target for them, and they'll certainly try and use that combination to be able to replicate what they would have with Sammy Wallace and Khalifa McCollin to ensure that they, again, can keep the scoreboard ticking over. I think we've seen a bit of a shift in the scoring power of some nations over the last few years, and certainly to lose someone of the ilk of Sam Wallace is is a massive loss to Trinidad. And I think they'll struggle to win a game in Pool B.
Yeah, I mean, like Lucy said earlier, both pools are pretty tough competition, but it is going to be really hard for them. Where do you think that they're going to finish? Do you think they're going to take the wooden spoon, or?
Yeah, I think they'll be playing off for 11th and 12th with Barbados. I think they'll finish bottom of that pool. And I know it's not necessarily indicative of where they sit at the minute, but to have lost to Jamaica last October as well, when Khalifa played and her mum was the coach at the time, I think they lost the first test by 49, the second game by 32, and the third game by 51, just shows that there is a great gap between those countries that are ranked potentially in the top 5, maybe 6, and then those who sit towards 10th, 11th and 12th at this point in time, particularly with the loss of experience, or as I said earlier, Barbados, who have probably got some very experienced athletes that they're going to have to select some of their youth over the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, it's going to be really tough for them, but keen to see what they can put out there. And we think we might know the answer for this one already, but who will you be keeping your eye on for Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, I don't think it's been easy to avoid her presence across social media, but certainly Shaquanda Green-Knoll who had a brilliant season in the Super League as well. It's been a long time since I think Trinidad have had a really stable defence end, and I certainly think that Green-Knoll could be someone who we could see for the next or this cycle, and then again through the next one, to be able to have her really as a focal point in that national side over the next 6 years could well hold them in good stead, particularly with the likes of Sam Wallace to come back in. You'd like to think for the World Cup next year.
Yeah, 100%. Shaquanda has just gone from strength to strength from her debut season in the VNSL last season. Even from her first game to her last, I think the progression that she had and the growth that she demonstrated has just been absolutely sensational. So yeah, she's the one that we were going to keep an eye on as well, won't she, Luce?
Yeah.
And so next up is Scotland in Group A. Obviously, they've got relatively new coach in Tamsin Greenway, massive sign-in, sort of shook the netball world a little bit. And they've also got a lot of new combinations, including the likes of Iona Christian and Hannah Layton, who are also recent additions to the side. And recently we heard the news that Lindsay Gallagher, again, has got another injury, absolutely devastated for her, so she won't be competing. And they have finished 9th in both of the last Commonwealth Games, but only 5 of the current squad played on the Gold Coast in 2018. So Jenny, what are you expecting to see from this Scottish outfit, and where do you think their strengths lie?
Oh, I think Scotland are going to be absolutely fascinating. You know, a number of their players do play for the Strathclyde Sirens, and I think last year they had a really strong tournament in the VNSL, and they've probably been a little bit disappointed with their form, you know, in this year's competition. So that form could potentially either follow those players into the Commonwealth Games, or they could come in seeing that they've got a real point to prove, you know, to try and move up the rankings. I think the coaching brains and smarts of Tamsin Greenway and Sarah Francis Bayman is such a bonus for them. You know, they're 2 very clever, tactical, astute women who I think will make a great impact on that team. And then also we really can't, you know, underestimate the impact of what's gone on behind the scenes, you know, with people like Karen Atkinson. So, yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how they go. As you say, there's a lot of new players that have made their way in, so some combinations are going to be a little bit lacking, heartbreaking for Lindsay Gallagher, and she'll be a real loss. However, you know, the return of Claire Brownie, I think, will give them a lot of confidence through that mid-court. You know, she provides a lot of stability. And we've also seen players like Iona Christian, you know, really step up this year. You know, her movement, I think in the past, where Scotland have struggled a little bit is some of that transition into the circle, and then also the transition sort of into the defensive mid-court. So, you know, she's potentially somebody, I think, that could really sort of help transition that ball quite safely through court.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. She had a sensational season for VNSL this year. And I think, you know, Michael, you alluded to earlier as well, we saw that test series against Barbados, and Lisa Alexander on commentary at the time said that she thought it was a top 5 performance, which, if I'm honest, I'm not 100% sure if I agree with personally. I was a little bit surprised when that came out, and I think everyone sort of latched onto that. But yeah, where do you think, Jenny, that they're going to be finishing with that in mind?
I think they'll be sort of middle of the group so far. I'm sort of predicting them to finish around 8th, which would be an improvement on where they've last finished. But I certainly think, the competition between some of the UK nations, such as Wales, Wales and Scotland in particular is going to be fascinating. But I think Scotland will potentially finish ahead of the pack.
Yeah, so interesting you mentioned Wales there. So obviously we had the recent series between South Africa, which was fascinating to watch. Lucy was actually down there in the arena, which was awesome. And obviously Wales also failed to qualify for the World Cup in 2019. So they will be absolutely gunning to make an impact in the games this year. They did show some real patches of brilliance in that warm-up series that I mentioned, and they do have plenty of experience in the midcourt and some VNSL stars at both ends. So, Michael, coming back to you now, what do you think is the biggest work on for Wales?
It's probably their ability to consistently challenge against those top sides. I think to have improved 7 goals against South Africa, and obviously both sides made changes the other week. They also have another crack at them on day 6 of this tournament as well, given that they're in the same pool, and to be able to measure themselves as we look into a World Cup, and then as identifying what they need to work on heading into over the next 3 years, heading into the next cycle. I think that's a really exciting challenge for them. The fact that they get something so close to this competition against a top 5 side who, perhaps with Lenise Potgieter, would be challenging for a medal position. Without her, probably not. It's a great yardstick for them. So I certainly think that their ability to create international competition with those ranked above them to continually challenge themselves, that's going to be certainly something that they need to look forward to. But in this competition, it's their consistency as well. To be able to have a homegrown coach, as it were, in Sarah Moore now at that helm, and hopefully for a really long time, I think that level of consistency, given they've had influences from outside the country in the past, and Julie Hornwig springs to mind for the last Commonwealth Games, there are building blocks that Wales can certainly tap into in order to propel themselves forward a little further.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And what we saw in that test series against South Africa is in the first game, they put out a really good first and fourth quarter. And then in the second game, they put out a really good first, second and fourth quarter, but they haven't been able to show that consistency just yet. So I think you're absolutely spot on there.
And then just quickly before we move on to Malawi, we've got a lot of teams to get through, guys. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of teams. So Wales then, back in 2018, they finished 11th in the Commonwealth Games. Was not a good outing for them. So what do you think in terms of their finishing position this year, Michael?
Well, I think Scotland's going to pip them in the pool. I think that's one of the games of pool play to keep their eye on. I think with Tamsin Greenway, under Gail Parada with Scotland, I think we saw a lot more structure for Scotland in that side. I think with Tamsin Greenway, I think we're going to see a bit more flair and a bit more speed. And I think that may be too much for Wales on this occasion. So I'm tipping Wales to finish second bottom in the pool, and they'll play off, I think, with Northern Ireland for 9th and 10th.
Yeah, exactly what I was thinking for that one. And any player that stood out for you or that you're keeping your eye on?
Oh, look, a bit of a soft spot for Susie Drain, given that she's just notched up her 112th Test match, and that's a new record for Wales as well. She's been a stalwart for that side through the middle for a very, very long time, and potentially her last games as well as co-captain, I think she is now, of that side. So, looking forward to see some power through the middle from her across this campaign.
Yeah, for sure. Big up Susie Drain and Nia Jones as well, fan favourite, and Qtr Time Pod alumni as well. She's been on the podcast. She was great to chat to. So lots of strength in the Wales midcourt as well. So moving on then to Malawi. So Malawi have incredible strength in their bookends, namely Joyce Mvula and Maui Kumwenda in the attack, and Tuwera Vinkumbo and Loreen Nguira in defence, all of whom have former or current VNSL experience. So I'm going to come back to you, to Jenny, for this one. So what will teams need to do to combat the Malawi style?
Oh, look, Malawi are going to be fascinating at these games. You're right, they've got a lot of experience at both ends. they've had a lot of time together, obviously, and they've also beaten South Africa at the last 3 Commonwealth Games. So there's a lot of rivalry between Malawi, Uganda and South Africa. And so really it's just going to be, for me, how Maui Kumwenda adjusts to settling back into that lineup. You know, she wasn't there for the last Pinnacle event, and plays, you know, a little bit of a different style, I think, these days, having been in Australia for so long, the Malawi's possession game. So I think teams playing against Malawi are going to have to really be quite patient in avoiding penalties and trying to, you know, gain ball back from them. But for me, it's really going to come down to how Malawi's mid-court functions, you know, just in connecting the defence and attacking ends.
And don't forget as well that back in 2018, Malawi defeated New Zealand and they obviously very nearly made it to the semi-finals. So what do you think we'll expect to see from them this year in terms of finishing position?
Look, I think they'll finish 6th. I think the top 4 or 5 nations are probably going to be too strong for them at the moment, but they could potentially finish, you know, push up into 5th position. It really depends on, I think, how that crucial matchup sort of against South Africa or Uganda comes at some point, you know, wherever they end up meeting them. So, yeah, it's just that mid-court, it's all going to come down to what they do with that.
Yeah. And an interesting fact as well, that they've never finished outside of the top 8 in their Commonwealth Games appearances. So that's pretty good going from them. And any particular players you're keeping your eye on? Obviously, those ones we've already named, but any others as well?
Look, I still can't go past Vinkumbo. I know you've mentioned her, but having interviewed her a couple of years ago, and she's just such a beautiful soul, incredible story, you know, leaving her child behind to come out here and play and, come out to England, which is where I am at the moment, to play. So I just think she's a lovely woman. She's had an incredible couple of seasons and I'm just really looking forward to seeing how she goes.
Yeah, she's who I had marked down on my little notepad for my one to watch as well. And she's another dual athlete as well from memory. Is she a footballer as well? Yeah.
Yeah, she's a footballer. So she's played with the national team along with her sisters for Malawi.
Yes, my memory does serve me well on this occasion. So following Malawi, it is Uganda. They are in Group B, and undoubtedly, like we've already alluded to, they are a massive threat. And I would imagine have the tallest shooting end in the competition with Praskovia Peace and Mary Cholak. However, both of these players traditionally play goal shooter, and they have done for the majority of their domestic careers. And I think this is something that comes up every now and again, this question of, do you put your best players out on court even if it's not in their ideal position, or do you want to play them sort of where they're most comfortable and then risk not having 1 or 2 of them on court? Michael, what's your thoughts on how this will play out, particularly around that shooting end?
Even though I have 0 coaching qualifications, I'm not sure I'm the best person to ask. However, I think that's a really intriguing question, and it's been asked of other nations as well, particularly the top 4, and based on domestic performance, whether they actually are deserving of, you know, a starting 7 position, or whether you do have to. I mean, Liz Watson's a great example too. You know, she's played a lot of game time at centre for the Diamonds, but predominantly plays wing attack for the Vixens in Super Netball. So it's a quandary, I guess, for the Malawi coaching staff as to how they do that. Peace, you know, it's very rare that she played at goal attack for Sunshine Coast Lightning in Super Netball, and I'm sure it's the same at Surrey Storm. So I guess the question, and it's the same for Maui Kumwenda at Malawi with Joyce and Vula, as to how that plays out and whether the coaches are really going to be concerned around creating a game style that suits that one player in that attack end, or whether they're going to be interested in having a 2-pronged attack. As you say, that height is really advantageous, and really only South Africa and Australia with Cara Conan and Gretel Tippett are going to be able to put out a goal shooter, goal attack combination where they have both shooters who are over 190 centimetres. And I guess it really depends on a relationship that can be built between the goal attack and the wing attack. And that is one that work off the line is really important. Are you going to have Mary Cholak with her height and her reach to be able to sit back for second phase on every centre pass? And is that game style going to be very easily read and picked off by opposition as well? So whilst you're going to have arsenal to be able to call upon. They've certainly got a lot of questions as to how that will play out, because we're yet to see that at international level. And Mary didn't play at the Commonwealth Games in Uganda's debut in 2018 as well. So we haven't got any form to be able to sort of cast eyes over as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be absolutely fascinating. And it's actually the Uganda-Malawi game, which is one of the ones that I really, really want to see happen. And you just said there that 2018 was Uganda's debut for the Commonwealth Games and they placed 6th. Do you think that they'll be able to repeat that level of success this time?
They certainly have the capacity to do so. And I think we talk about England winning that Commonwealth Games, and I'm sure both of you love reminiscing about that, not so much.
Oh, wait, hang on. We do know we win. Yeah.
Right on cue.
It's not like we
here, Michael,
every single time.
But I think people often forget also that if Malawi had beaten Uganda, they only lost by 2 goals. If Malawi had beaten Uganda in that game, in that pool play, they actually would have made the semi-finals and knocked New Zealand out. So that pool was incredibly close. Their biggest losing margin at the Gold Coast as well was only 13 goals. So I have no doubt in my mind that they can certainly challenge, maybe not for the top 2 spot, but certainly knock Malawi off. I have picked Malawi to win that game. Simply based on experience and of course the unknown of Uganda. But they beat them, I think, in the Pent series towards the end of last year, and then it was a draw between the 2 nations in the Africa Netball Cup towards the end of last year as well. So, but again, both sides were missing their international or their athletes that play in other domestic competitions. So it's a wait and see. I've picked Uganda to finish 7th overall.
Nice, love that. And is there a particular one to watch for Uganda that you've got your eye on?
Yeah, Mary Cholok, because as I said, she hasn't played at the Commonwealth Games before, and what her role is going to be in that side as well, I think is going to be very intriguing. We've seen how deadly that she can be for Loughborough Lightning, and obviously winning that championship last year as well. So, certainly keen to see what her role is and how damaging she can be, and perhaps over the next few years we'll see her spread her wings and make her way to domestic competition down under.
I don't know. I think we want to try and hold on to her for a bit longer, yeah. So now we have come to our top 5. So we're going to come to both of you as we examine these teams. So South Africa, they are world number 5, and back in 2019, under the leadership of Norma Plummer, I think it goes without question, they were really making waves and pushing for a medal. And I remember in the World Cup, their match against Australia, they came back from whatever the deficit was to bring it back to 2. And then I think they brought it back level, and it's absolutely edgy as seat stuff. But the squad is missing a few key names. Some we've already mentioned, Lenise Potgieter, Carla Pretorius, Ziggy Berger didn't make the South Africa programme. Not to mention the likes of Erin Berger and Marika Holtzhausen, who have been stalwarts for South Africa in the past. So, Jenny, I'll come to you first. Which of the current players, in your opinion, needs to stand up for South Africa for them to be in with a chance of winning a medal?
For me, it's got to be the second-tier players. They've still got some experience in Bongi Masomi, Pumza Mawani, but of those second-tier players, they really need to step up and support their more experienced team members. So I'm really looking at players like Shawani. I think that, Erin Berger was that sort of centre mid-quarter that South Africa relied on for such a long time. She was MVP at the 2011 Netball World Cup and an absolute stalwart for them over the last, 8 to 10 years. That's a real hole that South Africa really need to fill now. I think Shawani's a really sort of, she's another very nuggety, gritty player who I think can really step up across the centre wing defence line. But it is that second tier level of players that need to step up and give their support. I do actually have a few concerns for South Africa at this tournament. I just think they're missing so many players. They're in a really tough pool, which I think is not going to do them any favours at all, because to make their way into the top 4, they'd potentially either need to beat Jamaica or Australia and also have a pretty good percentage about doing it. So, that with the loss of their spine, I think is going to make life pretty tough for them.
Yeah, Michael, I can see you nodding your head there. Are you in agreement?
Yeah, I am. And it's sometimes when you talk about a spine, you can talk about, Carla Pretorius and Erin Berger and Marika Holtzhausen, but then on top of that, to think that you've lost Lenise Potgieter as well. that's a heavy loss, and I'm just thinking towards the Netball World Cup next year as well, and for South Africa as a netball nation to actually look for some momentum heading into that as well, for marketing, for confidence, heading into that, hosting that World Cup. And I wholeheartedly agree with Jenny that I don't think that we're going to see them at their best at this Commonwealth Games, but as Jenny also alluded to, it's those athletes who we haven't seen yet that we will be keeping a close eye on to see how well that they can fit into the program and be up to that level of those experienced players who are remaining. And you have to look at the likes of Pumza Mawani and Bongi Mzomi and Ina Marie Venter, who has really stood up in the last couple of years with the Mavericks as well, and to see whether that form can translate to I guess, being the new spine, in the hope that the likes of Lenice Potgieter and Carla Pretorius make their way back into the side.
And out of those maybe lesser experienced players, there's a few really exciting names. Nicola Smith, I think, has been a great prospect in goal defence. I think it is that she plays. You've got Dow, who was really exciting in the Wales Test series recently. Who of those lesser known or lesser experienced players are you particularly excited to see, Michael?
There was two names I had down. One was Shadeen van der Merwe, particularly because of the role in which she could play, either across goal defence or wing defence, and how they plug that other position. And then secondly, it was Lefebvre Rademan. I think she has great potential. She's young. She's a nippy. She's very quick for a goal attack, and I think that that game style and that speed will actually complement Ina Marie very well in that goal shooting circle as well. So those are the two that I had my eye on.
Yeah, Lefebvre Rademan really has potential to be an absolute game-changing player, and I think we've seen little sparks of that throughout Super League and throughout recent Test series, but I think there's so much more to come for her. And Jenny, who are you most excited to see for South Africa?
Probably Nicola Smith. I think, we've heard a lot about her. I've only seen brief glimpses of her in a recent Test series, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how she progresses and whether or not she can step into Carla Pretorius's very big shoes.
Yes, very good shout.
So moving on then to Jamaica, I think it's fair to say that we probably didn't see the best of Jamaica against England last December. And I get the feeling that they've almost slipped under the radar. A lot of the talk has been about Australia, about New Zealand, and particularly about England. So Michael, coming back to you, do you think that people have underestimated the Sunshine Girls?
Not necessarily. In leading into this event, I guess there's an unknown, particularly around their midcourt. I don't think they've been underestimated in the past, 12 months or so. I think they've underperformed, and I certainly don't think that they've had the structure that they've needed or the discipline that they've needed in order to really challenge consistently. Again, going back to Commonwealth Games 2018, they only lost to England by a single goal in that semi-final. And it could have been them standing on that podium with a gold or silver medal around their neck. I think Paula Thompson was a massive loss for them at the World Cup in 2019. And given that we haven't seen their mid-court, they've got no mid-courters playing in the Super League this season or the last season, just gone as well. So that's a bit of an unknown, and how well they can combine with a really exciting defence end of Latanya Wilson and Jodie Ann Ward and Khadijah Williams, and then also Katie Ann Dehaney and, of course, Shamira Sterling as well. And then how they can, I guess, blend and be great carriers through the court, and what flair that they will bring to be able to feed the likes of Shimona Nelson and Janelle Fowler. It's really interesting that they've had Rob Wright over in Jamaica for the last couple of weeks. I know he's been doing some online sessions for the last few months. And speaking to a few Netball Jamaica board members not too long ago, they were quietly confident about how the girls are going to perform at this campaign. So I don't necessarily think they've been underestimated. I certainly don't think that they've played at the level that they know that they can. And on their day, they could beat any of the top three, hands down.
Yeah, and so coming back to you, Jenny, so obviously we know Jamaica narrowly finished third in 2018. Do you think this side has the potential to make their very first final?
I do. I'm tipping them to play off in the gold medal match. So, yeah, I know. So I just think having sat courtside for West Coast Fever over the last few years, I think Jill Fowler's really taken her game to another level. And I think the combination this year of Shamira Sterling and Latanya Wilson is one that very few international teams have experienced. You know, a few of the English have, a few of the Australians have, but for teams like New Zealand and South Africa, they really haven't come up against them very much. And Latanya Wilson in particular, we know what Shamira is capable of, but Latanya Wilson in particular has really grown in defence, and she's also become a really valuable ball carrier into attack. I didn't really like the experiment with her in centre, I must admit, but yeah, so I think, you know, in the finals, they're potentially going to come up against either New Zealand or England, you know, in a crossover semi-final. And you put that defensive end together, they win a few balls, the opposition loses a bit of confidence, you know, the feeders sort of change how they're feeding into that circle. And with such tight margins that we've got amongst the top 4 or 5 teams these days, it only takes a brief lapse in concentration or loss of confidence and it's game over. So I think, you know, New Zealand have not played Jamaica recently. I think the England mid-court really haven't had a lot of time against Jamaica. And on, you know, as Michael said, you know, on their day, Jamaica can beat anyone. So wouldn't surprise me to see them head into that gold medal match.
Wow. Yeah, big calls being made here. And Michael, do you agree?
I think Australia will be good enough to beat them in the pool play, and I think England will beat New Zealand. So I have Jamaica and England in one semi-final, and then Australia and New Zealand in the other, like the last Commonwealth Games. I picked England to win based on experience and based on the home ground advantage. I would love to see Jamaica in a gold medal final. I think that they have the talent first and foremost. And I think there's, and Jenny and I have spoken about this in the past, that there's certainly been a great focus on Janelle Fowler, or the tall goaler in Jamaica, and that it's sort of a gift to have them there. But going all the way back to the early 90s or the late 80s with Patricia McDonald, and then Elaine Davis, and then we had Carla Borrego, Romelda Aiken and Janelle Fowler. They've never made that final, that big final before, but they've certainly got now the talent across the rest of the court, and the ability, as we've seen with the Adelaide Thunderbirds with Tanya Wilson and Shamira Sterling, to turn over ball. And when you've got someone like Janelle at the other end who doesn't give away a lot of ball at all and rarely misses, they've certainly got the full complement to be able to certainly make their way and to win gold. So I haven't tipped them at this point in time, but it would not surprise me in the slightest.
I know we've spoken a lot about their mid-court deficiencies, but I do think, you know, with the experience of Shanice Beckford in goal attack, and then also the Australian-based Jamaicans that have played across the wing defence, goal defence line, you know, acting as ball carriers, I think that can really sort of cover up for some of their deficits that might potentially be there at centre and wing attack. And then I think also, you know, they've really responded well, particularly on socials. You know, we've seen the addition of Rob Wright, I think, has been a particularly strong one. So, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I definitely think that everyone is going to be keeping a really close eye on them throughout the competition. And that South Africa matchup, I think that's the first time we'll really see what Jamaica are made of in this games. And then obviously onto those latter stages at the business end, it will be really, really close. So I think I need to take some kind of, you know, like heart attack prevention medication before this, because it's definitely going to be extremely, extremely tense. And so moving on then to England, of course, we are English and unashamedly pro Roses, of course. But how do you think, Michael, coming back to you for this one, how do you think that England's experienced lineup will stand up to the pressure of being reigning Commonwealth champions?
I think they're experienced enough to embrace it. They've certainly been throughout their careers, and you can look, you know, simply at Jade Clark and Jiva Mentor in particular, who've been there for such a long time. They've been there when England have been at their lowest, when they were, you know, being battered from pillar to post by Australia and New Zealand by 40, 50, 60 goals. And now to be out here and playing so well year on year, and winning tournaments and series against New Zealand in particular over the last 4 years or so now, that they've certainly have had the wood over New Zealand. Experience is great at one thing, but experience in close games and knowing how to do that and repeat success is another. And I know it's something that I've heard Lisa Alexander speak about across 2014 and 2015, that repeating success, particularly on home soil, is incredibly tough. And this is not sort of a back-to-back in that sense of year to year, but it's certainly back-to-back in a tournament sense. And this is also a test for Jess Thilby at the same time, given that it's her first tournament. And there is a sufficient blend, I think, of youth in there to keep the older ones very young and on their toes, particularly through Sophie Drakewood Lewis, Laura Malcolm and Imogen Allison as well. But that experience that England had is considerable. And between Jade Clark and Jiva Mentor alone, they have more test caps than the entire Australian Diamonds 12. So I think it holds them in good stead, particularly when you're wanting to block everything out and really focus on the task at hand at home. But a World Cup is also very different to a Commonwealth Games when you are competing as a country with hundreds of other athletes and there is constant noise around, and it can prove to be a distraction. So I think they've just got to find the right balance of how to appreciate and absorb it and then also be able to focus on the gameplay. But England should finish with a medal of some colour.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope so, definitely. So, Jenny, coming to you, do you think the same? Do you see England finishing up there at the top?
Yeah, I certainly do. I'm not sure that it'll be gold or silver at this point, given my tip with Jamaica. But look, I love the English team. I think they're super experienced, and I love sort of the combinations that Jess has been building over the time. Potentially my couple of little queries around England. The first one is I think there's enormous pressure on Nat Metcalfe. England have 3 very big games in 4 days right at the end of the tournament when body's already tired. We know that she's had a few problems with the calves in the past. And so in those 3 big games, how are they going to rotate her and still keep momentum going? So that's going to be one of the challenges I think they'll face. And the other big challenge I think they've got potentially is that, the defensive end has always been their greatest strength in the past. And, they're incredibly experienced, they're agile, they're very tactical and clever. But over the last 10 years, have a few of those players potentially lost a few of the springs in their heels. And I think more than just about any other tournament that we've seen, this tournament's going to be played in the air. Just about every nation has got a towering goal shooter and a mid-court that like to feed the ball in quite high. So, it's going to be a game of millimetres at times and centimetres and, potentially a couple of those older legs, particularly towards the end of the tournament, that could perhaps bite them a little bit. So I'll be really interested to see how they all cope. And I think Jess will be quite conscious of that and she'll look to rotate that defensive end quite a lot. But, that will be something that I'll be keeping an eye on. And I think for England, because of that, the work's really going to have to start in the mid-court. And, there's no denying, obviously, that Guthrie and Cobden have been huge losses defensively for them too. So, they've certainly got some great cover there with Allison. But, yeah, that's going to be a challenge for them.
Yeah, I find that comment you made about the defence end really interesting. I completely agree. And for me, that was why I was so devastated not to see Fumi Fedoju picked, because she is young. She's got elevation like you would not believe. She's really got the hops and she is pretty much an unknown and she reads the game, I think, like very few other players. And I think she would have given England that point of difference or that spark they need to be able to sort of take the likes of an Australia or Jamaica, as we've discussed. So, yeah, I'm a little bit nervous, I'm not going to lie, but I'm going to pick the girls. I'm going to say they can do it. Michael, where do you think they're going to place?
I have England down for silver, that they'll play off in the final with Australia. But Jenny's kind of talked me out of that very comprehensively, right? But I think it is going to be whoever turns up on the day. And in fact, a question I had for both of you, Lucy's, was where is Laura Malcolm's best position? Because I think with Guthrie out and Cobden out, and obviously Metcalfe is really becoming a specialist wing attack, and Sophie Drakewood Lewis has the potential to swing from goal attack to wing attack. Does Jade Clark sort of sit back to plug that wing defence? Is that left up to Stacey Francis Bayman. Where does Laura Malcolm fit into that?
I would say that we agree on this, Luce, that Laura Malcolm's strongest position is the wing defence. And I think she is absolutely sensational in that position. I think she can cover centre. She can cover wing attack as well as an option against lower ranked teams. But I don't think we'll see her playing wing attack against Australia. I just think that's unlikely. But I do think we have a lot of options in that wing defence position, and it's, like you say, a question of whether we put, our steady Eddie, Jade Clark, experience for days in the middle to just run things and keep it calm and stop it getting too hectic, and then Laura Malcolm in wing defence. I mean, her tracking ability is insane, her backing up, it's really, really good to watch. And I think with Beth Cobden not in the side, that's now more likely to be where we see Laura Malcolm. Do you agree, Luce?
Yeah, completely agree. I think we'll obviously see Imogen Allison in the earlier stages so that the likes of Laura and Ajay can rest the legs. But I do also think that we'll see Stacey Francis Bayman in wing defence. I think we'll have a Jiva, Layla, Stacey lineup at some point, maybe even in a sort of Jamaica level match. But yeah, I think the options that we have is almost too much flexibility, almost too much choice there. So yeah, I'd be absolutely fascinated to see what Jess goes for in those like real crunch moments. So, I mean, we could talk about England for literally days.
We could do a whole
so
separate podcast episode just on. We did actually. Yeah. That's true.
Yes, we did. So I'm going to move us swiftly on to New Zealand. Now, there was a lot of talk about this squad with the trial system and the selections that went on for New Zealand this year, and a few eyebrows definitely were raised by the choices. There were some huge omissions, including Maturo, Kimura Poi, Ekanasio. Following the Cadbury series, Jenny, I'm going to come to you first. How do you feel that this New Zealand squad is shaking up, and has confidence in Knowles' decision-making been restored?
Well, in the interest of disclosure, I did miss the Cadbury series because I was away. New Zealand are probably my biggest enigma because on one hand, they've lost a massive amount of experience. I also was quite surprised by the omission of a couple of players. I think we saw Maturo really challenge Australia quite a lot in the last Constellation Cup they played. And I think New Zealand are really missing a key goal attack at the moment. Most of their shooting end are mainly goal shooters, sort of turned goal attacks, although I think Maya Wilson's filled that gap quite nicely. But on the other hand, they've had a lot of time together, a lot of preparation. Dave Nolan's very tactically astute. They've also got an Australian analyst who knows the Australian team very well, and they potentially might come up against Australia at some stage. So there's a lot of pros and cons on both sides, and I'm finding it really hard to get a handle on them. From all reports, I think, they really, Whitney Souness apparently was an absolute revelation at centre. I will just say from a domestic perspective that she does reset backwards to the transverse line quite a lot. And I think these days with a lot of the opposition's tall goal attacks and wing attacks, there's quite a lot of opportunity there for opposition teams to put a hand in and sort of, send the ball off track. So I think that's something that Souness will perhaps have to look out a little bit. I do query a little bit how their mid-court defence will go. It's not sort of something that I've seen a lot of recently. I mean, it may be terrific. I just, as I said, I missed the Cadbury series. And the other thing I think that we have seen too is that Grace Nweke, I think, has a very bright and huge future ahead of her. We haven't seen her tested a lot against international teams, and when she has, she's been quite nervous. So, if they come up against either the Australian or the Jamaicans in that crossover final, how's she going to cope under that pressure? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. And we know as well that there's obviously a few, not just the ones that didn't get selected, but there's also some other massive players who are out from injury or from giving birth recently, Jane Watson, Callum Berger. So there really are a significant number, almost like a starting seven, really, of players that could have been selected or weren't able to because of those reasons. So massive, massive omissions. And Michael, obviously we know in 2018 they had a real shocker. They failed to medal and they kind of have a point to prove. Knowles herself said that it would be a challenge for them to make finals. What's your take on New Zealand? Where are they going to place?
Oh, I really agree with Jenny. I did catch the Cadbury series, and I think Knowles has been quite deliberate in understanding the risk versus reward in terms of selecting this 12. Obviously, she put in the fitness component and standards that she, I think if she had her time again, she would like to have tapered a little bit in order to justify selection of a few other athletes. But she has a specialist in each third: Grace Nowicki, Gina Crampton, Kelly Jury. So you can create a spine from that. But there's also a risk in each third. Grace Nowicki, again, as Jenny said, 4 test caps, hasn't shone in her time on the court in the international scene. Kate Heffernan as well. And then I think Kayla Johnson was also a risky choice given her lack of consistency at Northern Stars this year. So there's a specialist in each third and then a risk in each third. What I think Knowles will do, though, in stark contrast to the 2019 World Cup when she had the fossils, as they were affectionately known as, I think she won't be necessarily looking for a 60-minute performance from a set 7. I think she is looking for a game plan that she will devise against whoever her opposition is, that is built around any number of those 12 athletes playing their role for a certain amount of time. I think the thing that also got Kate Heffernan over the line in her selection was her steal combination with Shannon Saunders and Gina Crampton. And those couple of years together, we know the Southern still, they play a little bit like the Melbourne Vixens, in that they do not like to give up the ball. And so the little ball that the defence end may get, and for mine, the one to watch is Kelly Jury. She had a great season at Pulse, and whether she can actually carry that form through is if that mid-court can provide a really safe and sure carry through of that ball to their goaling end, who aren't shooting very accurately at the minute. That's going to be their best chance of success. So I think there's certainly a method to the madness for Nolene, but as to whether that team can back up consistently match after match and really put together out on court the pieces of the puzzles that Knowles wants to see, this is New Zealand's biggest challenge yet, because based on the unknown of Jamaica, the experience and home ground advantage of England, and really in some ways an unknown of Australia, New Zealand could be looking down the barrel of another 4th place. Yeah.
You know what? I actually completely agree. And I know there's a lot of discourse on social media around New Zealand and people saying that they're absolutely going to compete for a gold. But I genuinely think they might struggle to medal at all. Like, Jenny, where did you say you had them placed?
4th.
Yeah, I actually agree. I think Jamaica will get that bronze. They're not going to beat us, Jenny. I'm just going to put that out there now. Jamaica will come third.
Sorry.
If that happens, by the way, Jenny, we are so coming for you.
Yeah. Yeah. You would have manifested that. Yeah. But yeah, I genuinely think that they will struggle to medal. I just don't think that they've got enough of the big names and enough of those like gold medal match players to be able to get them over the line. Lisa, do you agree with me?
Yeah, I think so. But I also have like trauma memories of the World Cup semi-final. So I
still can't watch that game. I've not watched it.
So that is the only reason why I can't rule them out. I can't do it. I have to keep an eye on them, because otherwise, Nolene, like we said, she is such a fantastic technical coach, and I really see that she could get those players over the line if it's their day. So who knows?
Well, we shall see. And finally, the last team to touch on is a nation you guys might know a little bit about. It is, of course, Australia. And with only the quad series in the trophy cabinet, the Aussies will absolutely be out for blood. And obviously we took the medal on their home turf. They've now got the opportunity to do that to us. And I do think that they genuinely have the squad to be able to do it. Arguably their weakest area, if you can call it a weak area, is probably that shooting end. And I think there's a couple of players who either aren't in their best form or who are still returning from injury. So Michael, I'll come to you first. What combinations do you think that we will see in the attacking end for Australia?
Throw them all into a blender, put it on high, and then spit it all out. No, I think there will be some tried and true out there, but I think that's one of the advantages, as I just alluded to, about Australia being a bit of an unknown. We had Kira Austin play in the Constellation Cup in 2021, didn't play in the Quad Series, and the vice versa for Gretel Bueta. So we actually haven't seen those two athletes not only on court together, we actually haven't seen them in a team together before. So I think there's that combination that we could certainly see. We've seen footage on social media in the last day or so of Cara Conan at goal shooter and Gretel Bueta at goal attack as well, going with two talls, which I think is something that could be incredibly lethal. Yeah. And then you've got the experience and the an athlete with all the time in the world and just superb vision in Steph Wood as well, and a great netball brain to boot, to slot in there somewhere as well, either in goal attack, or I actually like her at goal shooter with Gretel out in front. I think that has provided a different dynamic in the past. I don't think that's a combination that will certainly be explored a little bit more, but it's certainly there should Stacey Marikovic like to pull that out of the hat. But I think in the midcourt as well, there's certainly some flexibility through Paige Hadley as well as to whether she lines up in either of those three midcourt positions, although I think we'll see her more at centre and wing attack. Ash Brazel has certainly earned. I've certainly been critical of her in the past, and I think justifiably so in terms of her ability to only play one position. Whereas I think we've certainly seen her capacity at centre as well over the last 2 years or so, particularly with Hub Life for Super Netball, and certainly again some unexplored combinations defensively as well that I think and some combinations that exist that we certainly haven't seen at their full strength as well. So I think there's, across all thirds of the court, certainly some scope for the Diamonds to really put their foot to the floor if they're good enough.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the one thing that strikes me when it came to the squad selection, I was totally with Stacey for the majority, but I was quite surprised that Kate Maloney got selected over Maddie Proud. I think Maddie Proud is absolutely sensational. I think she's had one of the best seasons ever. So Jenny, do they have the right squad to be able to go all the way?
I certainly think they do. Look, I think the biggest problem for Stacey going into this with her selection was twofold. I think one was that the Diamonds have had very little international match practice together, and Maddie Proud, unfortunately, just has that bit less than Kate Maloney. Liz Watson's always going to be your first choice, either centre or wing attack, and we do know that Kate Maloney's got a very strong existing connection with her. But I think the other issue for me is that the SSN is really an outlier competition in terms of the amount of contesting that it allows. And I think, so the VNSL and the ANZ championships that New Zealand participate in, they probably have the closest umpiring to what we're going to see across the Commonwealth Games. So for Australia, who have really played most of their playing careers under this umpiring that allows a lot more contesting, they really need to watch their penalties, watch their footwork and things like that. And we've seen in the past that Courtney Bruce and Sarah Clough have had a few problems adjusting to that. So I think the players out the front of them are going to have to build pressure, but also be very careful to stay and play. And for me, Maddie Proud, we've seen her hit the deck a fair bit, which, it's not a penalty, but it does take her out of play. So, Kate Maloney, for the most part, does tend to be quite clean. Towards the end of the SSN season, she and Liz Watson did run into a little bit of penalty problems, but I think, with a bit of footwork, that will clean up. So that to me is funnily enough, is actually, although the defence end is a little bit more or far more experienced than our shooting end, that for me probably is a greater area of concern than anywhere else on court at the moment.
Interesting you say that, because obviously Courtney Bruce and Sunday Ariang have just come off the back of winning a premiership as well, so some would argue that could maybe be one of the strongest areas of the court. So it's interesting that you say that. And if you had to pick one, we know that the team is made up of absolute superstars, but if you had to pick one player to watch out for from Australia, who would it be? Jenny, come to you first.
Right. For me, it's Kira Austin. I think to play against a number of these teams, and particularly that very last critical pool match against Jamaica, there's going to need to be full court defence. And at the moment, Steph Wood, I think she's superb in attack, as Michael sort of mentioned. Defensively, I don't think she's got enough conditioning to run a really strong defensive game as well. And we've particularly only seen her sort of come off on the bench for Sunshine Coast Lightning. Whereas Kira Austin, on the other hand, has really built into the season. She's quite tall for goal attack. We've really seen her get a hand in there and come up with a number of gains for the Melbourne Vixens. So I think her ability, she's also been quite accurate in shooting. So I think her ability to impact defensively as well as in attack is going to be crucial because she's been out for a year with that ACL. We haven't seen her across the quad series. So I think for a lot of teams, she's going to be an unknown quantity, and what she can add to that defensive as well as attacking midcourt is going to be pretty crucial for Australia.
Yeah, I completely agree. The way she's been able to come back from that ACL and the form she's in at the moment, I think is absolutely outstanding. And Michael, who is your one player to watch from Australia?
I could go down the predictable line and say Gretel Berwetta, but I won't. For me, it's actually Courtney Bruce. I think she had a really solid season that wasn't plagued with injury, as we've seen over the past few years for her. Had a standout final series, and I think on the back of that, will have grown in some confidence that has probably been lacking over the last two international events. So for me, it's not only her performance on court, but also where she sits. Does she sit in front of Sarah Clow at goal defence, or does she sort of prop us up at the back at goalkeeper, and then and have Jo Weston or Sunday Ariang out in front of her? So I have sort of been keeping a close eye on Courtney and to see how, I guess, her game matures and herself as an athlete over the last few years. And I think she's at that tipping point now of where she needs to really be putting it out on court. And I think she'll be a great barometer as well for the Diamonds as well. So, I've got big raps and I'm expecting big things out of her.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's just so many players from Australia. As you were listing some of them there, I was thinking, oh yeah, crikey, they've got her as well. Oh yeah, and that one. And so it is definitely a concern from the other nations' perspective. But just before we wrap up, we've sort of touched on it, but let's just recap. So we're going to make you put your money where your mouth is now and say definitely who you think is going to be bronze, silver and gold. So Jenny, coming to you first.
Look, I'm really sorry to do this to you ladies, but bronze for me is England, silver Jamaica and gold Australia.
Gold Australia. Okay, Michael?
I'm going to change what I wrote down on my paper and back Jenny in.
Wait, you're putting us third as well? Oh, this is outrageous. Okay.
Yeah, I think that.
What about you two ladies?
Jamaica is going to be intriguing. And if Jamaica can put it together, I think they will they'll cause England some headaches. Now, Jenny's convinced me 100%. I think the other interesting thing too is, particularly around South Africa, is that both themselves and Scotland and Malawi and Uganda do not play on the opening day. And so between days 2 and 8, if they're not going to make the top 2 in each pool, they've actually got 6 games in 7 days rather than 7 games in 10 days. So that burden that already exists if you're going to make it to the end is already quite sufficient, but it actually makes it a lot harder for those that don't play on the first day. So, and I think that also may be South Africa's undoing to an extent as well.
Wow, that is so interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that actually. You know, when you think about the draw and how that goes, and, you know, lots of the more challenging games are right stuff down at the end there. And so it really does make it more challenging for those teams, particularly South Africa. Okay, Luce, we're going to have to do it as well.
Oh,
You go first.
Man, this is tough because I do have, same as the SSN finals, I do have a head and heart situation going on. So I'm going to go with my heart. So bronze, I'm saying Jamaica. Silver, I'm saying Australia. And England, I'm saying gold.
Okay, nice. Love that. So I'm saying bronze, New Zealand. In Knowles we trust. That's what I'm saying. In silver, I'm going to say England because my predictions are always wrong. And in gold, I'm going to say Australia.
I like it.
I hope this is the year that you are correct, Lucy. I hope.
Oh
this
no,
is the year.
I hope it's not. I tipped Loughborough Lightning to win the final. I tipped the Vixens to win. So I'm on a losing streak. So
To be fair, I'm actually pretty accurate normally, aren't I? Well,
yeah. So actually, this is probably a great way to do it, and we'll all be manifesting everything ahead of next week. Oh, guys, this has just been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise today. It's just been really super to run through all the teams and to get such brilliant tidbits of information as well. Enjoy the games, hopefully not too much, and we will hope to speak to you guys again very soon. Thank you so much again.
Thanks for having us. Enjoy the event.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, and good luck for it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Qtr Time Podcast. We are bringing you daily coverage from the Commonwealth Games with new episodes, live podcasts and social media content. So do keep your eye on our social media channels for all the info you need, including our content schedule.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media at Qtr Time Pod for the latest netball updates. Get involved in the conversation online by letting us know what you think of the matches throughout the games and which players you've got your eye on. We really do love hearing from you, so do get in touch.
And some really exciting news. We are also going to be organising an in-person meetup in Birmingham on Saturday, the 6th of August from 12 till 2, just in between the semi-final matches. We'll be putting all the details up on our Instagram page, so do check it out and hopefully see you there.
And finally, we would really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate and review, as it helps other people to find the podcast. If you enjoy listening to the pod, please let us know and do spread the word with your netball pals so even more people can get involved. Take care, everyone, and see you soon. Bye.
Bye.